see that. We're going to zoom out a bit. We're project and cost managers, and our role is to build the whole of the hospital. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we achieve the current NHSI requirements, aspirations, if you like.
Oh, sorry, Miles, the audio just dipped out. Miles, can you hear me?
Miles, your sound is gone.
Miles, your audio just gone.
Project healthcare around the UK. I'll talk about a few of them in a minute. David.
Miles, your audio dipped out then, so we didn't hear a great deal of that. But I'll carry on. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Elsmore. I'm also a partner like Miles at Gardner & Theobald. I lead a cost management team predominantly focused on the commercial real estate development market, which includes mainly mixed-use commercial office and residential-led schemes. Google's new headquarters at King's Cross is one of my team's current schemes under construction, and I'll talk today about some of the experience that we've gained in terms of smart building technology on that scheme and others that is applicable to other sectors, including healthcare.
Thank you, David. I'm Richard Francis. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Gardner & Theobald, and I work with clients to help them understand net zero carbon, healthy buildings, and the implications of PropTech, and I'll be talking about those things throughout the presentation today. Thank you. Miles, can we hear you?
Super, thank you. Hopefully my audio is now better. Gardner & Theobald is, as I've said, a project and cost management firm. We're a firm of about 1,000. We do nothing else other than project and cost management, a few other construction consultancy things. From time to time, we sub-consult design work, but mostly we're there to deliver your vision of a new hospital. We're mostly based in the UK. There's a few of us in North America as well, but we've avoided trying to cover the whole of the world and stick to markets that we're good at. In terms of healthcare, we're delivering 2 of the 6 HIP1 projects. So we're project and cost managers on both Epsom and St Helier's new specialist emergency care hospital and the Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow. Previously, we have a long track record at that's Basildon in the picture there. Also the other hospitals that make up Mid and South Essex, Southend and Broomfield. Springfield University Hospital, we're doing the rebuild there. We have a 25-year relationship at Great Ormond Street. We've done most of their buildings there. That one on the bottom left is the new Zide Centre for Research. The Maggie centres, so some of the most forward-looking buildings built in healthcare, and then in terms of forward-looking buildings, the Northumbria Emergency Care Hospital, which was the start of the move to specialist emergency care hospitals.
So we're fortunate to be market leaders in the commercial office sector on new build, refurbishment and fit-out schemes, both in London and across the UK. The inherently linked topics of smart building technology and sustainability that we're talking about today have increasingly featured as key priorities for our clients in this sector over the last few years and continue to do so. This slide shows just a handful of our more recent projects, including Google's headquarters in the bottom left-hand corner, which I'll touch on in a bit more detail later.
We intend to use this experience of commercial buildings, which are a few years ahead of where hospital delivery is in terms of smart buildings, to show how we can achieve NHSI's current objectives. So what are we trying to achieve? Smart hospitals deliver lots and lots of things. At a kind of basic level, they deliver the enhanced control over internal conditions that we know improve health outcomes. They, as we've heard from Ascom colleagues, they improve things like nurse call and follow me technology for patients and staff. There's a world of opportunity there, and it's really interesting to hear from colleagues on how that might work. Tracking of staff and assets, again, we heard from colleagues on that. All of which can improve patient experience. There are some fairly simple things like the entertainment, but also bespoke wayfinding, check-in experience. Looking more widely and possibly into the future, linking through to electronic patient records. Actually, that links through to virtual assistants and ultimately to electronic dispensing. The integration with medical technology, we heard some of that in the ASCOM presentation. There's lots more to that in terms of both tracking devices and understanding how devices are working. In terms of support to the multidisciplinary teams, AV technology and rooms which are set up to allow multidisciplinary teams to be formed quickly at the bedside in a virtual sense and contribute in a better way than the simple use of mobile phones and that other kind of technology that we're all quite well used to. Telemedicine and remote monitoring, virtual assistant, possibly a little bit further in the future, but the technology needs to be put in now into the new buildings in order to be able to support those in the future. The gold standard, though, is to improve the analytics so that we can look at the data that comes out of smart buildings to understand how we can improve health outcomes and length of stay outcomes. And we believe that this is possible, and we're certainly driving towards that in some of the HIP 1 projects. It's also necessary to achieve net zero carbon, and obviously this is a really significant part of NHSI's agenda. We will only achieve it if we can improve the enhanced levels of control that knowing which rooms are being used and which rooms are not being used gives us. It also gives us improved conditions on a control over lighting. We can improve lighting so that it suits an individual's requirements. You know, possibly if people need a lower level of lighting, then the lighting will dim automatically as they move around the hospital. Shorter feedback gives you better control over the environment, and that saves energy. We can reduce lift energy by stopping them going up and down when people call them to random floors, and allow the security systems to integrate neatly into that. We can do digital twinning, and that allows predictive maintenance. If we can be monitoring things in real time, we know when they're likely to fail. And machine learning gives us the ability to tweak the building really using data about how it's actually performing, not how it's meant to perform, and that gives us lower energy outcomes. Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Miles. As Miles was suggesting, net zero carbon and healthy buildings are important considerations when it comes to smart buildings. But I'd like to push the envelope a little further here and suggest that zero carbon and healthy buildings are not only the biggest issues for sustainability, but maybe the biggest issue facing property in general in 2020, and they will be for years to come. And it's simply the case that technology is essential to meeting these two big aspirations. It's important to remember that there are plenty of low carbon buildings that are not healthy and plenty of healthy buildings that are not low carbon. And there's lots of technology which is useful for one and maybe not so useful for the other. And so the real trick is finding the synergies between these two important items. And at G&T, we've been following these issues for more than a decade, having been involved with the low carbon government program commercial buildings since 2006, and more recently with the World Green Building Council's landmark efforts in healthy buildings. So we know the right solutions for the different kind of buildings and different kind of clients. And healthcare and hospitals are a particularly useful one to think about here. Buildings with higher energy use, larger what we call people expenditures, where the money really is in the people, both staff and clients or patients, and easy quantifiable outcomes like the amount of medicine dispersed or patient stays and so forth. They all lend themselves to a good business case, which we know a little bit about. And this is especially true. This is especially valuable when the owners and not the tenants in the commercial world are bearing the costs. The leading organization for both net zero carbon and healthy buildings is the World Green Building Council, and we have been their lead external advisor on healthy buildings and sustainability since 2015. In the next slide, I'd like to talk a little bit about our work with the World GBC and bring it back from commercial buildings back to hospitals. So in 2014, we co-created with the World Green Building Council the framework that you see on the slide here. It was done for sustainable and healthy commercial buildings, but it was based largely on hospital research. Many of you on the line here will know all about the early studies that were done around providing access to good daylight and greenery and so forth, and the beneficial impacts they had on patients and reducing the amount of medicine that needed to be dispersed and the patient's stay. We use those very important findings to develop a model for commercial buildings. And we brought the technology in the smart building into office buildings, retail, homes, and schools. And in practice, we have seen that sensors and smart tech have demonstrably lowered energy costs, led to more satisfied occupants, and had better business outcomes through smart applications. In fact, the best business case for sustainability is providing a high-quality environment using lower energy. And the model that we developed is intuitive, it's agnostic, and it's universal, easily adaptable to healthcare situations from whence it came, but it needs tech to work at its best. So as Miles said, collecting data and then improving the product, that's essential. It's the bedrock for every other industry that we can think of. So why not property? The opportunities that are here for hospitals and healthcare are immediate. Payback can be short. And PropTech now, after many years, is going back into healthcare buildings, which was the inspiration for the commercial property that we've developed and has been so successful. So as we look at this and we begin to apply, we anticipate many opportunities and good outcomes for properties that get this agenda correctly. David?
Thanks, Richard. So in terms of smart buildings in the commercial world, as I've mentioned, we have Google's new headquarters at King's Cross as a specific case study and one of the best examples of a smart owner-occupier building we're currently involved with. It's widely acknowledged that this will be one of the most advanced smart buildings in the world once it's completed. It will provide approximately 650,000 square feet of space, which will house around 4,000 Googlers, and it's partway through construction, due for completion in 2024. Next slide, please. I wanted to start with a couple of definitions, which I'm sure some of you will be well versed in, but I think are just worth underlining. Firstly, the Internet of Things, or IoT. You can see the definition on the slide, but this can perhaps be more briefly summarised as the extension of internet connectivity into everyday objects and physical devices. We're all seeing this, examples coming into our homes, like smart speakers, televisions, thermostats, recently doorbells, and other items. So these can be remotely controlled, as you'll know, and monitored from anywhere in the world and from any device that has internet connectivity, like your mobile phone. Smart buildings, as it says on the slide, have these interconnected technologies built in and use them to monitor performance, flag inefficiencies, and make automatic adjustments. Next slide, please. So what are the key drivers for Google and others in the commercial world that I'm sure are common in other sectors as well for using smart buildings technology? What are we looking to achieve? From an occupier's perspective, it's fundamentally about increasing user satisfaction, giving the best possible experience to staff and others visiting the building. It's making that experience seamless, well sequenced, minimising waiting and wasted time. A number of scenarios were considered in that respect during the early design stages, including things like automatic booking and allocation of meeting rooms, setting of environmental conditions and equipment, automatic check-in and colleagues and guests, and many more. The possibilities are almost endless, and undoubtedly there'll be further as yet unforeseen benefits that are discovered in occupation. Another key driver is giving users control over their local working environment, such as temperature and lighting levels, thereby increasing their satisfaction with the conditions and reducing complaints. Efficiency in use is clearly a key advantage, enabling maximum focus on revenue-generating activities by minimising wasted time. It also has the potential to enhance flexibility of the space by offering automated reconfiguration for new projects and teams. Clearly, Google and others want to be seen as having the best technology in their buildings. It is a reflection of the business and the products it sells, and it wants to give its people access to data, and that has a potential for new business opportunities to be realised. Attracting the best talent is also a key driver. People want to work in the best, most exciting, most comfortable environments that best enable them to fulfil their potential. The next generations of employees will have grown up with this technology and expect it as the norm. As Richard said, there is an inherent link that we've seen between smart buildings, health and well-being, and environmental sustainability. Richard talked about the case studies for the World Green Building Council in offices and retail buildings. Those have established already strong correlations between environmental factors, customer and user satisfaction, and economic factors such as staff retention, absenteeism, revenue generation, and sales. Smart buildings will have those sensors built in, allowing the real-time continuous data collection. analysis and provision of data such as air quality and space utilisation across whole buildings. That facilitates immediate automatic adjustment to optimise internal conditions as well as operational and environmental performance. Smart buildings will enable data-driven asset management. That means that maintenance and replacement will be based on actual usage of space and actual performance of equipment. Faults will be detected automatically and rectified before they become bigger problems or even noticed by building users. And finally, of course, this drives potential cost savings that are significant in the operation of and use of our buildings. Next slide, please. The drivers then are pretty clear and compelling. So how is this done? The things on this slide are some of the key things we have experienced it means. Firstly, the building is managed on a common IP network versus a local building network that's typically been the case in the past and has often meant separate networks for different systems. This means the building control system is on one common network on the internet and all systems and components are able to communicate with each other. All the individual items of equipment, such as the lights and the fan core units, have their own IP address, which means a significantly increased number of data points in the building. The second key factor is that the equipment is specified with open versus closed protocol, which was mentioned in the previous presentation, and that is the language that those devices speak. That has been one of the key challenges and represents a significant industry shift. The open protocol enables all the devices in the building to communicate with each other via the network. It also unlocks the potential to harness clean or unmanipulated data, thereby giving the owner or operator of the building absolute visibility and control over its performance. Some suppliers of building components are reluctant to do this for obvious reasons, like fear that their components or systems will be replicated and reduce competitive advantage. It is, however, a fundamental part of enabling a fully smart building as one of the key selection criteria in the procurement of systems and components for Google. A significantly increased number of data attributes are provided in the BIM model, which is held in the building management system, effectively creating a comprehensive digital twin of the building. This increases the amount of data generated and enhances the potential functionality and control of the building. The vast volume of data that these components will generate will then enable the application, as Miles said, of artificial intelligence and machine learning. You can see that that has the potential to identify correlations that may result in significant improvements in the building and how the building is used over time. Next slide, thank you. This slide shows some of the things that need to be considered from a practical point of view in implementation. There is a significant development team within Google defining the requirements for the digital functionality of the building and how it will be operated and managed in the future. We've had a smart buildings consultant that has developed and is overseeing how those requirements are designed and delivered. A master systems integrator is testing each of the actual components as they're provided by the various trade contractors and suppliers to make sure that they are technically compliant and compatible with each other as well as the overall building network. As the building is managed and operated on the network, it obviously means that that network needs to be made available somewhat earlier in the program than usual. And I think it probably goes without saying that security of the network is also an absolutely key issue. So to conclude, I want to touch briefly on some of the key issues we have seen that need to be considered in the implementation and the management of smart technology. Data privacy and security are obviously, as I say, top of the list generally. Many people are anxious about their movements being tracked, what personal data is held about them, and how secure that data is. From a corporate point of view, the security of the equipment connected to the network is of paramount importance. Simply speaking, the more items that are connected, the more potential gateways there are for hackers to gain access to your network. It's important that that is given as much consideration as structural integrity by employing a specialist that understands the potential threats. We have found there is currently a limited pool of manufacturers building in smart compatibility in their equipment that offer up the open source data that I talked about earlier. However, we're expecting that this will continue to change as more clients require it as the norm. poorly implemented technology can obviously have the opposite to the desired effects, as I'm sure some people would have seen, and disempower occupants, taking away control of the environment, causing frustration. So the right balance, therefore, has to be struck with backup plans put in place. Finally, whilst ultimately there are the potentially significant cost benefits that I mentioned earlier, initial implementation obviously comes at a cost. Adoption of the IoT technology is increasing as the equipment suppliers compete to provide components that have the best functionality at the best price point. And the bigger issues we found are the availability and the cost of the people with the necessary expertise to manage the design, procurement and implementation of the technology, as well as the vast amount of data that will be generated post-installation. So I hope that's given some useful insight on the implementation of smart building technology and considerations for its application on healthcare projects of the future. And I think we now have the opportunity to take any questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you all. Great presentation. We've got a question here. Typically, how long does a project take from initial contact?
Well, I think it depends on the scale. The project that we're looking at St Mary's Hospital will complete just about when I retire. So that's 8 years of work. The HIP 1 schemes that we're looking at for Epsom and Helier and Princess Alexandra are they're 5-year schemes. But I mean, as colleagues were talking about earlier, we're also doing ward refurbishments and putting in the technology necessary to support smart buildings in those takes as long as a regular project. So I mean, it might be six or 12 months. What we need, though, is a paradigm shift. It's not just a buildings issue. It's a medical flows issue. It's an HR issue. If you're to be tracked around the building, then you need to deal with the HR issues of that. If you're to integrate medical technology into the smart hospital, then you need to revise the way your clinicians work, and clearly that takes time, and it's not just a building project.
Miles, if I can pick up on that just a little bit, in our experience as well, particularly with regards to sensors, and maybe Dave can say a little bit about this. There is a question out there, a concern, a building that has a long period of development. How do you know what the right technology is for now, so that you don't get redundancy and start spending money before you need to? And that's just there's no right answer to that, but just realize that these things are moving very quickly. Some of the sensors we used 4 years ago are no longer the right ones, and so that's something to keep in mind as you work your way through this.
It is an issue, as you say, Richard, particularly as Miles says, the bigger projects take a long time to become completed. So the Google project King's Cross is large, a large office development. And I've been at the start of that was 2012, so you can see it's going to take well over 10 years to from start to finish. So obviously that's the design, procurement, and through to construction. So that issue is absolutely pertinent, and the way that we've tried to overcome that on that particular project is by building in the requirement and the specification for the at the time of installation for the suppliers to offer up the most recent technology at that point in time.
Perfect, thank you both. And then just quickly, one last question. Regarding your work with the Great Ormond Street Hospital, can you give some insight into how the project was delivered?
So we've delivered a number of projects for Great Ormond Street. The one which I mentioned was the Zide Centre for Research. Skanska built that, and they were employed on a design and build basis. The architect, which was Stanton Williams, was novated to the contractor, Skanska, and that was delivered over. It was a program of about 3.5 years. In fact, there was a separate basement contract for a number of reasons, but that's a detail, I suppose. Ultimately, the fit out was managed. We had some input into it, and it was managed in conjunction with Great Ormond Street. And so the technology on the desks was installed by them directly, but that was connected then to the IT technology that we managed the installation of.
Perfect. And then just one last question from Tim Wilkins. How do we quantify savings in running costs that might arise from this approach?
Richard, do you want to say that?
Sure. I mean, that is the real beauty of having a smart system in the building. You don't know what you're saving until you, in many respects, obviously, or you don't know where you're saving it, I should say, until you have the proper sensors in place. I would think that that energy is one part of this, and we spend a lot of time on that. And certainly with a hospital, which is heavily energy intensive, you will see savings unfold themselves straight away.